All right, welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of Sabre. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner Waterman chapter of Sabre in Vermont. Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. Hey, where's Jeff? Jeff Cohen, where are you?
I'm here. Here I
Oh,
am.
thank God, Jeff's here. We can have a meeting now. Hey, what's going on with the podcast this week, my guy?
So yes, this week we are featuring former catcher of the Detroit Tigers and New York Yankees, also played with the Giants and Colorado Rockies, Matt Noakes. Matt Noakes is now a hitting instructor. He
Yeah.
does he does hitting batting lessons. And an interesting story, he's also a plane crash survivor, which he talks about as well. So that's on this week's episode of Baseball and BBQ.
Oh, that's really interesting. Hey, what's going on with the other podcast? What's going on with the New York State Hall of Fame?
New York State Hall of Fame. Yes, we recently had on a baseball coach by the name of Paul Cloud. He's a New York State Hall of Famer, and he has a terrific story. He hobnobbed with Ricky Henderson. Great story about Matt Fishman, who made it to the major leagues from a Division III school out of Union College in upstate New York. So he's a baseball lifer and a college baseball coach. His name is Paul Cloud, and that's on the New York State's Baseball Hall of Fame, New York State's Halls of Fame podcast. Thanks,
Something like
Bruce.
that. Yeah, it's easy for
Yes,
you to say.
I know, right?
Right? If you're not downloading those things using your favorite podcatcher, do it because those podcasts are fantastic, especially Baseball and Barbecue, which is my favorite because, of course, it's baseball and food. And I mean, it's barbecue, let alone food. I mean, where else? Well, how can you go wrong? Right? And speaking of that, hey, Joe Ross, what is your favorite entry on Today in Baseball History?
First, have to note that it's wonderful to have this meeting start and you can still see outside.
Right? I,
Baseball is a weird sport, and there are delays all the time for various reasons. In a minor league game in 2024, there was a game in St. Lucie that was paused in the second inning because there was a turtle who walked across the outfield grass because he just needed a better view of the game, I guess. And on the major league level, I know it's going to be hard to believe, but Ted Williams was booed in Boston in 1950. It seems he actually made an error, not once, but in each game of a doubleheader. He responded with, you'll pardon the expression, an insulting gesture. And that's a bit of what happened today in baseball history.
I think he was telling the fans that they were number one with him, if I recall correctly. How do we get that newsletter, man?
Newsletter's available to everyone for only $10 for a Sabre member and $15.95 if you're dumb enough not to be a Sabre member. And you can get that. You're welcome. A check will be in the mail, I'm assuming. You can get that by sending an email to me, JNE Ross, spelled out, at gmail.com.
I'll
Thank you.
tell you what, we can't take Joe Ross anywhere because mayhem takes place wherever he goes. Joe, thank you very much. All right, let's get on with our feature presentation. Simulating Satchel is a utopian fantasy baseball invitation to explore the context and significance of a simulated replay of the 1934 Major League Baseball season. Hall of Fame pitcher Satchel Paige and nearly 100 of his Negro League contemporaries are freed from the ban of the sport's color line, added to what had been in real life the exclusionary American and National Leagues. The book features preseason commentary, rosters, predictions, and interviews. Pennant races from opening day through the World Series are chronicled in the fictional journalism of the Blackball Watcher. The scribes of that magazine and fictionalized real-life reporters examine with the author and season ticket-bearing readers how an alternative, easy for me to say, baseball integration story opens the way to examine the wider issue of racial justice in baseball history and beyond. Sabre member John Graf is a member of the Negro Leagues Research Committee and has been a local news paper, sports writer, and radio news reporter and announcer. In addition to authoring Simulating Satchel, John edited with Larry Lester and Duke Goldman from Rube to Robinson, Saber's best articles on black baseball in 2020. He is a retired employee of the Wisconsin State Legislature, where he served as a nonpartisan assistant clerk for the state assembly, and he is here tonight to discuss his new book, Simulating Satchel, a what-if history of integrated Major League Baseball in 1934. John Graf, my guy, what's going on? Welcome to Northern New England. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Bruce. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really grateful to have been designated the can't miss event of the week. I don't know how that happens, but
Do you
thank
know how
you.
much I paid for that, John? My God.
Oh, oh, well, Molly, we can go right to the first slide. And I don't see it. Should I be seeing it?
You're all set. We can see it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for everyone attending tonight to what I am going to call and I wanted to have Bruce say this because his rapid fire delivery would have been perfect for it, but I'm going to give it a try. The Simulating Satchel, Kenosha, Janesville, Beloit, Wisconsin tour. Greatest hits highlight reel. Clyde Sukeforth, Northern New England chapter special. So that's what we're doing here. Now, first of all, I want to acknowledge a couple of anniversaries from earlier this month before we start. Earlier this month, May 1st, was the 100th anniversary of Satchel Paige's debut with the Chattanooga White Sox, also known at various times as the Chattanooga Black Lookouts. On May 1st, 1926, Satchel Paige pitched his first professional game for the Chattanooga White Sox. And then the second anniversary is that of the Negro National League's first game in 1920 that happened on May 2nd. The Chicago Giants lost to the Indianapolis ABCs 4-2 at Washington Park in Indianapolis. So a couple of anniversaries that are worth citing. Now, I've got a big subject that I'm going to condense into a few themes. First of all, how the book came about and why Satchel Paige. A little bit about the Stratomatic game that was used in the simulation of 1934 and the structure of the leagues that I used. I'll focus a little later on the Beloit event during the tour, some notable attendees to that, and acknowledge the significance of stories. And then finally, Negro League lessons and the question that Simulating Satchel's story invites us to ask. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming events, the Malloy Negro League Conference and Saber 54. So next slide, please. Okay, it's great to be with you electronically here. It was really nice to be on the road during February, though. And the first stop on the tour was to Kenosha in February. Kenosha was the halfway point between the Chicago Emil Rothi chapter and the Badger State Milwaukee Ken Keltner chapter. On Saber Day every year, they get together, and I was fortunate enough to be invited to give a presentation there. And in this photo are a couple of the ringleaders, Dennis Degenhardt on the left, and then second from the right, Bill Perch from Chicago, and then the other three of us, second from the left, Jason Schwartz, myself in the middle, and on the right, Ed Hartig, were all presenters at that gathering. Now, there was a particular challenge for me that day because my book hadn't come out yet. So I was selling an imaginary book, and bless their hearts, some of the people in this picture and a few others were willing to consider buying the book sight unseen. Next slide. And then it was on to Janesville, my hometown, where we had a great audience on April the 4th. And so the book was out by that time and we were off and running. Next. So Dennis, when he invited me to Kenosha, would start with the question, how did the book Simulating Satchel come into being? And what does a painting of a lighthouse in Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, have to do with how the book came into being? I can't see the lighthouse. Can everybody else see it?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. Well, my father was the artist, and as you can see, he was a gifted painter, and he also was a church furniture designer for a living. And so any creative DNA that may have been passed on to me came largely from him. Now, my mom came from a slightly different direction. She approached me once during my childhood with a copy of Time magazine in her hand. And Juan Marichal was on the cover, the San Francisco Giants Hall of Fame pitcher from the Dominican Republic. In the story, Marichal was described as creating these makeshift baseballs out of whatever he could wad together. And his mom would say to him, Juanito, what do you want with this ball business? And my own mom would ask me the same question over and over again. But both my mom and dad could see that I was a dreamer. Next. Now, my dad saw that I dreamed of being a ball player and drew this baseball card of me when I was 6 years old. It's based on the old Post cereal box design, and I learned to like oat flakes, Post Toasties, alphabets, even Rice Crinkles to get the baseball cards that you could cut off the back of the box. And I scribbled the data on the card. I was a strapping 3'9" and 38-pound 6-year-old. The batting and fielding averages on the card weren't computed correctly. I hadn't learned long division yet. But my dad put me on the Chicago White Sox in the outfield, and he gave me my first baseball cap, a White Sox hat. I wore it all the time, and people told me that I was going to go bald. Next. Now, I knew all along, though, that in addition to being a ball player, I wanted to write a book. So Simulating Satchel wasn't technically my first. That honor goes to my sports page. 93 half sheets of typing paper, 93 pages, again at age 6, copied information from the back of my baseball cards, and added my own drawings. So the cover drawing on the left was my work, and Minnie Minoso on the right. And the baseball card that I had of him that was a model for the drawing was when he was a member of the Cleveland Indians. Next. So why Satchel? Well, it was a labor of love going way back. I first found out about Satchel Paige when I was about 7 years old or so. My dad had given me a copy of a magazine called The Old Timers Photo Album that had a photo of Paige in it. And the caption to the photo read, it showed Satchel in his windup. It's not the photo that you see on the slide, but it said in the caption that Satchel could have become an all-time pitching great had the color line in baseball been broken 25 years ago. Now, those who followed black baseball knew that Satchel was an all-time great, but the Negro Leaguers were invisible to the white exclusionary baseball power structure. So I started learning about Satchel and the Negro Leaguers, wondering why more of them weren't on my baseball cards and on the television playing. And I identified with the underdog to state it, understate it dramatically. The Negro Leaguers were underdogs. They were outsiders looking in and excluded. They intuitively became my favorites. So I tried out for Little League, didn't get chosen for a team, started making up my own teams, imaginary, baseball, football, and basketball, with players who I saw had come close to making Major League Baseball clubs or the NFL or the AFL, the NBA, the ABA, but they didn't reach the majors. And so in football and basketball, I became aware of players who performed at historically black colleges and universities. They were on preseason rosters that I spotted, but then they seemed to disappear. So those imaginary teams were my entry into an inner world of what I call utopian baseball fantasy that led me to Stratomatic. And the board game and computer game were the basis for the simulation that became my book, Simulating Satchel. Next. So, what else was there about Satchel Paige himself? Well, his legendary wit, for one thing. One of his catchers said that he had more nicknames for his pitches than he had pitches themselves. And I also saw a reference once to the notion that he had different pitches numbering in the hundreds, but that seems like a pretty tall tale. If you count pitches thrown at different speeds, thrown at different locations, with different windups, I suppose you could approach that, but I'll let you be the judge of what's true and what's legendary. Next. Now, Satchel's wisdom is legendary as well. I'll call your attention to number 5 in his rules for living. Avoid running at all times. That's a foreshadowing of a treat that I'll share with you a little bit later in this presentation. And then there's number 6, don't look back. Something might be gaining on you. I'm grateful to the writer Rowan Ricardo Phillips for his take on that famous quotation and giving me permission to use it in my book's dedication. So Satchel would wind up on television programs like What's My Line and I've Got a Secret, the old Tonight Show with Steve Allen hosting it. And on those shows, he would recite those rules for living. Next. So to summarize so far, Satchel's professional baseball career dated back to the 1920s when he pitched for Chattanooga in the Negro Southern League in 1926, and then the Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro National League starting in 1927. He made his way to the Pittsburgh Crawfords, the team that he placed for in my simulation in the early 1930s, and played for the Kansas City Monarchs. In addition, there were many stops in Winter League baseball, including Latin America and California and the United States. And his career in what had been the exclusionary majors pretty much ended in 1953 after a couple years with the Cleveland Indians and several years with the St. Louis Browns, and then one more game that we'll get to a little bit later. But after 1953, we get a connection, my local area, this time Brooklyn, but not New York, Brooklyn, Wisconsin. It's delivered in 1954. And before the game, there was an announcement in the Wisconsin State Journal. You see the clipping on the slide, announcing that the Harlem Globetrotters baseball team would be playing the House of David Barnstorming Club. And Satchel Paige played for the Globetrotters. I haven't been able to find a box score, but there is video. Next. So the footage that you're about to see was recorded by a gentleman named Jim Johnson of Evans, Wisconsin. He attended the game with his home moved camera, and I wound up receiving it of an email a number of years later, a number of years ago, I should say, of the digitized version of that film clip that was rescued from Johnson's son Luke's basement. So you can see Satchel warming up. I just love his nice, easy motion. And when he wasn't pitching during his barnstorming days, Satchel played a lot of other positions, including first base. And you're going to see him scooping up a couple of short hop throws, both backhanding and to his left. So watch him backhand this first one. And then in just a couple seconds, he'll be scooping up one to his left. So you can see, in addition to having a golden right arm for pitching, Satchel was somebody who was an adept glove man as well. Well, most of the time. um, there are conflicting stories about Satchel's hitting, whether he liked to bat or liked to talk about it, but he's going to take a couple of swings here after his stroll to the bat rack. And I want to remind you again of that rule for living number 5, avoid running at all times. So this is a rare piece of footage indeed, showing Satchel Paige disregarding his own advice. Now there's one pitch that we're going to see in this 2 minutes of Satchel. And I want you to check out the arm action as he goes into his stretch and fires the ball. So here he is on the mound, close at that right arm. He's 48 years old at the time of this video. And that arm was moving pretty well, if the video is any indication of how hard that he could still throw. Now, there was no box score, as I said. So for those who require a box score for the game to count, the game barely exists, but we know better. And there's a backstory of the video that I'll go into for just a second here. Roundy Coughlin was the name of a sports columnist for the Wisconsin State Journal in Madison. And he knew about the game because he wrote about it in advance. He was invited by the organizers, and in Roundy's column, he thanked the organizers for the invitation, but he begged off, saying that he had to judge the Labor Day parade in Madison that day. And then the following day, he was going to go to northern Wisconsin to do some fishing. And I think Roundy flubbed his dub. And what did he miss? There was a story here. It was not just a ball game, but Satchel's a multifaceted persona. And for Roundy, who was an outdoorsman, he lost a chance to meet a fellow fisherman, missed out on Satchel's being not just an athlete or entertainer with the legendary wit and wisdom, but a collector of antiques. He was an appreciator of music. Satchel reportedly learned a half dozen musical instruments at the reform school that he attended in Alabama just before his teen years, when he got into some trouble. And Satchel would be pictured later on in life at a piano or with a guitar, or hanging out with the likes of entertainment immortals like Billie Holiday. So baseball was part of an entire cultural scene and an economic entity vitally important to cities like Pittsburgh and Kansas City, and many other outposts where black baseball was played. So moving after the 1954 home movie, even closer to home for me, Satchel was based for a while in Beloit, Wisconsin, where I live now, and he played for a promoter named Dempsey Hovland for a team called the Havana Cuban Stars. Now we can go to the next one. So here's Satchel working out. This Associated Press photo from 1959 has a Kansas City dateline. That's where Satchel resided when he wasn't on the road. And the caption reads, Satch was signed for the season with the Havana Cuban Stars out of Beloit, Wisconsin. He said that he would play with the Cubans to keep in shape in case, quote, I get a call from a major league club. So Satchel at that point was still hoping that he could catch on with a major league team. And this photo was taken on the heels of 3 highly successful seasons for Paige in his 50s with Miami in the International League, the highest minor league classification. It was owned by Bill Veeck, who also owned Cleveland and St. Louis in the American League when Paige played for them. And Veeck eventually sold the Miami Marlins, and the team's new owners didn't want anything to do with Satchel. But that one game that I told you about before in 1965. At age 59, Satchel threw 3 innings for the Kansas City Athletics against the Boston Red Sox in Kansas City, threw 28 pitches, gave up 1 hit, a double to Hall of Famer Carl Yastrzemski, and no one else reached base. So in later years, Satchel still had to beg for a chance for any job in baseball. He had family members writing letters to all the teams, trying to get a job, but somehow through it all, through a long road, Satchel was elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown in 1971. So there's a satchel full of Satchel to answer the question, why Satchel? Now on to the game used in the simulation. Next slide, please. So I don't want to give you any spoilers and let the cat out of the bag, letting you know who wins the Pennant and World Series in simulated 1934. But I can tell you about the game that was used to play the simulation. It was called Stratomatic. It was invented in 1961 as a cards and dice board game, and later it became a computer game. And that game is based on season replays. You can replicate a past season, see how a replay compares with real life. It uses mathematical probability to create realism in terms of who the best home run hitters would be, high strikeout pitchers, base stealers, the best fielders, etc. And Stratomatic developed Negro Leagues cards and dice and computer offerings later on, so you could move players around from team to team and integrate the pre-Jackie Robinson major leagues. So that's what I did in simulating Satchel. I played 1,620 regular season games at bat by at bat. Took about 20 minutes to play each game for a full 1934 season plus the postseason. Took 2.5 years worth of weekends. And wrote up every game. Had to cut a lot of the write-ups for the book. But the Stratomatic fan forum online became my guinea pigs to see how I was doing on the writing. And they liked it enough that I became a fiction guinea pig for my publisher, McFarland, which specializes in scholarly works with an impressive catalog of sports history titles, including Black baseball histories. Next. So I integrated and expanded the white majors into 2 10-team leagues. Moved the players around to integrate. Each of the 16 white original teams kept their entire starting lineups and their starting pitching rotations. And the rest were dispersed among the other teams. Plus, I added close to 100 Negro Leaguers. So the Crawfords, the Grays, and the Eagles, 3 of the new teams, were about half and half black and white players. The Monarchs had about 17 Negro Leaguers among their initial 22 players who started the season. So 2 or 3 Negro Leaguers also joined the real life exclusionary 16, meaning that, for instance, Turkey Stearns wound up a member of the New York Yankees. Cool Papa Bell played for the New York Giants. And Big Bill Foster was a Chicago White Sox left-handed pitcher. Next. So now getting to the book itself, this is what it delivers to keep track of it all. First, a context for the fictional integration of the 1934 season. To report on that context, the fictional preseason yearbook, Sweet and Fleet's Annual. It includes rosters, interviews, predictions, commentary, a bit like the old Street and Smith's yearbooks used to be. And then the regular season and the postseason were covered in another fictional publication, the Blackball Watcher, which combines brief summaries of key games and feature-length treatments of marquee matchups. And that Satchel Full of Satchel includes game stories featuring each of his appearances in the simulation. What I was aiming for was the effect of inviting readers to treat the events covered as though they were being reported in a daily newspaper or a sports weekly like the Sporting News or a fictional radio station. So there's a combination of fictional and fictionalized real life journalists in the book. And speaking of radio, one of the real life figures is Sherman Jocko Maxwell, seen on the right in this slide, considered the first black radio sports announcer. And Jocko shows up prominently in the book, especially in the postseason. Next. So after the postseason, I wrapped up the on the field action with a barnstorming tour featuring Satchel Paige. It toured the Western United States, which in 1934 didn't yet have Major League Baseball. That was more than 20 years away. So the Los Angeles Coliseum, though, was the last stop with 100,000 fictional fans on hand, filling the stadium that was the site of the 1932 Summer Olympic Games. So that's the summary of the on the field action. Next. Back to the book tour. And the most recent stop was in Beloit, where I currently reside, at the Beloit Public Library. It was just a little over a week ago. Next. And these notables were among a group of what I call the Beloit, South Beloit Breakfast Council of Elders. It's a large group that gets together a couple times a year or so. They talk about the old times and the present and future. And many of the members are keyed into the subject of preserving stories. So among those notables in the middle with the hat and holding my book in his lap is Jerry Kenney, whose name you may recognize as a former member of the New York Yankees in the 1960s, the late 1960s and early 70s. And on the left, standing up, is Phil Selmer, who was Jerry Kenney's double play partner at second base while Jerry played shortstop when Jerry was a senior and Phil was a sophomore in high school at Beloit Memorial. And then next to Jerry in the suit and white shirt, Charles Hubbs, who I met when we both worked in medicine at St. Capel. And finally, another former Beloit athlete in the picture is Marty Farr, who I think told me that he gave up playing around a golf to attend this Beloit book release. So in my remarks there, I made a connection between the great migration of African Americans from Mississippi to places like Beloit, Wisconsin. Next. So connecting the Beloit story with the Negro Leagues story, the Great Migration and the Negro Leagues. How do they relate? Well, for the journeyers who made the trip north, the African American Historical Society of Beloit's website, aahsb.com, says, quote, they sought control of their own destinies through advancement in employment, education, social relevance, and a voice in local politics where they live. Next. And so lessons from the Negro Leagues. I'm relating that great migration experience is quoted. The experience baseball Negro Leagues. To make that point, I want to introduce you to my friend Rodney Page, who grew up absorbing the history of black baseball. Rodney now lives in Austin, Texas. He spent his early years, though, in New Orleans, Louisiana. His father, Alan Page, was a team owner, a promoter, and a hotel owner in New Orleans. And by growing up in that environment, Rodney soaked up the stories of the teams and players firsthand, and he took to heart their life experiences, learning the lessons and making it his purpose to pass them on. He learned the lessons well. Rodney became the first African American head coach of a varsity sport at the University of Texas, Austin, women's basketball for the Longhorns. And here's how Rodney describes the experience of the Negro Leagues from his observations. You can read along with the quote on the screen right here. It's about self-reliance. It's about self-definition. It's about self-determination. It's about claiming your own excellence in life and your own worth and not waiting for others to bestow it upon you. Next. Let that sink in. That's what the Negro League experience was about. And next. So within and beyond baseball, everyone has a story. The book tells a what-if story focusing largely on Satchel Paige, and it's a great story. The significance of the Negro Leagues Rodney Page was referring to acknowledges that everyone has a story. In baseball, both the stars and the journeymen. The rest of the Negro Leagues all endured the challenges that were involved in some people in the United States at the time. What it meant when it took the courage to just simply exist and be visible as an African American in our country. Those were stories that manifested on and off the field. So I want to encourage the search of the stories we all hold inside, both stories that have been told and those waiting to be told in and outside of baseball. Next. So let's wrap up with a little bit more on the book and then bring the real life talk a bit more into the present. I hope that you'll take a look at the book. And again, not wanting to give away who wins the World Series, I'm not going to get into too much specific about the on-field action, but I do want to point out that for that on-the-field action, I've tried to make the book as easy and fun for you to follow your favorite teams and players as I could, and hopefully to find some new favorites among those you hadn't heard of before. The index includes nearly 500 players and other characters, black and white, as well as where to look for the front office people and visitors in the story, like Cab Calloway and Lena Horne. Yes, Cab Calloway and Lena Horne appear in the book. And then finally, to take a deeper dive into the actual history of black baseball during the Negro Leagues era and before, back well into the 19th century, my further reading list is extensive. So doing the simulation and writing about it has been a thought-provoking story for me. The fictional exercise tells how baseball's color line might have been broken more inclusively, with more black players, more teams, and an awareness of the consequences of integration for the Negro Leagues, which largely went out of business not long after Jackie Robinson broke in. So there's much more to research and more connections to be made. And then the last slide. Next. The picture on the left came from a greeting card that I got from the esteemed baseball historian Larry Lester. And if any picture is worth 1,000 words, this one certainly is. I'll just close on a hopeful note that at various times in baseball's history, it afforded us teachable moments where race relations were advanced, albeit ever so gradually, and with downsides that we're still barely acknowledging. Still, perhaps we can learn something in the present that affords us an opportunity to experience competition differently, not as a fight to the death, but as something to come to grips with, as a way of getting along with those with whom we disagree. Just as competing sports teams shake hands, come back to play another day, can competing forces in society and the world agree to share power and share resources? What if? Easier said than done, of course, but that's our agenda now. And our very survival may depend on it as we enjoy this rich history of baseball, imagine what might have been, and learn from it all more about how to operate in the big picture. So, a plug for the upcoming Malloy Conference and Sabre 54 National Convention. Look for my business card that you see in the upper right-hand corner in the goodie bags that'll be distributed at both events. I'll be at the McFarland Vendors Table to sign books, and am ready now for your questions, answers, comments, and corrections. Thank you very much.
And corrections. That's fabulous stuff. So, do you? I got to ask because I'm a sports sim guy myself, and Strat is my favorite. I play a lot of cards and dice when I have time. Is Strat the only game you thought of to do this? Because I know APA has increased their offerings as well.
Right. Strat was the only one that I was aware of that had the capability of adding as many players. I'm not real familiar with APA, although our friend Ted Knorr certainly is a champion of that game, and he could answer the question. But yeah, I started out playing Strat when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and so I go way back into childhood with that. And when they came out with Negro Leagues teams,
yeah,
that just had me hooked right there. And especially when it became possible to juggle the players around and configure teams that integrated and expanded. So yeah, Strat was the only one that I really considered strongly.
Mike O'Hare in the chat says, very inspiring and moving. Thank you. And we will see you in Cleveland. That is great, Mike. Thank you. If you have a question or a comment for our presenter, John Graf, tonight, you know what to do because Ben Alter has already done it. Go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the react button. You'll see another button marked raise hand. Raise your hand and we'll get you in line to ask questions of our presenter tonight, John Graf. All right, Ben, you knew what to do. So it's all yours, man. You're up first. Go.
Well, first I'm going to raise both hands and give the
Yes,
Zoom clap for a very good presentation. And then comes my question. So you play out an entire season. Now, let's say a guy has a 300 batting average, so that the Strat card is designed for a guy with a 300 batting average. At the end of your season, he's going to bat somewhere around 300, right? There shouldn't be any mystery in the individuals' statistics. It's just going to be what they do game by game. Is that accurate?
Ben, I need to ask you to repeat the question. I'm having a little difficulty hearing you.
Okay. Well, I'll start at the beginning, and then I'll move on. So, a guy who bats 300 is you'll create a Strat-O-Matic card for a 300 batter. You play 154 games. Won't that person is pretty much going to statistics is going to be pretty much close to what the actual statistics were. So you're looking more at you're concerned more about game by game and how it all plays out.
Well, actually, I was most concerned with integrating the game rather than just seeing if the statistics could replicate in the replay. I wanted to add these players, and I was going to let the dice rolls take care of themselves. The season did come out in a fashion that I would consider plausible. And I guess that's all I can really think of to say to answer your question. I'm not sure I understand the question completely.
John, if you don't mind me jumping in here, I might be able
Yeah.
to answer a little bit here. Ben, one of the things that's interesting about sports simulation games is the fact that in most cases, APA, Stratomatic, replay games, they're all dice-driven games. So when they're ported out to the PC, that dice-driven logic is still in the computer version of the game. So while
Individual events are random, but the course of the season should play out similar to uh,
so
what
yeah,
the
you hit
cards are.
third before I hit second. But point well taken that theoretically the game will provide you with statistics that are supposed to be close to that of what actually happened. However, because of the randomization of the games and such, in my opinion, each season that you replay, whether it's on the PC or on your tabletop with the dice itself, they all take on a life of their own. Things change. You never ever see the season come out exactly correct. What you see is that you've taken, say, I'll take one of my favorite seasons because I find it interesting, 1974. You take 1974, you put those cards on the table, you play that season, and things change. The last time I was in those cards and I was replaying 1974, I can tell you that the Baltimore Orioles stunk. The Texas Rangers were leading like the world. And those are two things that did not happen in 74. So things change on the tabletop. You have a very good point, but you're creating that world. And that's the most fun thing about it. And I think John can back me up when I say that's part of the fun, is that you're kind of administering the season on your own. John?
Got it. Thanks.
I agree.
Lee Jordan in the chat. Al wants to know what team you would have liked to see Satchel Paige pitch against.
What team I would have liked to seen Satchel Paige pitch against? Well, I would have liked to have seen him pitch against the entire American and National Leagues back in 1927 when he first came up. I would say that that's a kind of a global answer to the question, but yeah, I would have liked to have seen Satchel and his Negro Leagues contemporaries had that opportunity. So whatever team came up, boy, that's who I would want to see him pitch against.
Mark Arbor in the chat. A 300 hitter in real life should hit less, perhaps a lot less than 300, if you add a handful of excellent pitchers, including Satchel, to the league. And that is very true, because if you start increasing the talent level, you're going to see the world get altered very, very quickly in Stratomatic. And it gives you a plausible idea of exactly what would have happened had the right thing been done in 1934. Joe Ross in the chat. You're going to love this one, guys and gals. Seems to me it would work the same way it happens in a gambling hall. The slots are programmed to return a specific percentage, but is random in the short time. Over time, it averages as expected. Joe's got a point, but it's not gambling, Joe. It's not gambling. I'm shaking my finger at you, Joe. It's not gambling. Alex Stace, save me. What's going on, Alex?
Thanks. Well, I think we're mixing up two ideas. One is long run averages, which are true if you run one game or 10 games or whatever. But the other, and Mark got to this a little bit, but this is like two different distributions, right? The Negro League stats are different than the American League stats. So mixing them together is kind of a simulation, but it's not a simulation that's based on common opponents, right? So, Satchel Paige would be less good in reality if he pitched in the National League in 1934 than he was, or if you took all the Japanese players today and you mix them in strata with the U.S. players. Obviously, Ohtani's done well, but the distribution of statistics are driven from two different experiences, right? So that's a different concept than playing one game, 10 games, 1,000 games, in terms of what this simulation is designed to show.
Good
I would
point.
just say that, that I think that all the stats from the Negro Leagues would be a little bit, I think basically the black players would have a little bit less real life success in the new league, combined league, and so would the existing players, I think, because there's more competition.
I think you're just going to have to buy the book to figure out what happens, right, John?
Yeah.
I mean, really. Tim Brennan, how in the world are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for organizing this, and thanks, John, for your presentation this evening. I'm a long time Stratomatic player, and so could not resist. I heard this was going to be a Satchel simulation, and I was hoping it was Stratomatic. So thank you for choosing the greatest game ever invented. I've got two questions for you. And they're related. And you may have mentioned this. I was a little bit distracted at the beginning. I know you you created the Crawfords and a few other teams, and then you inserted some of the other Negro League stars into some of the other teams. Did you limit your player pool to just those players who were active in, say, the late 20s into, say, the early 40s? Or did you use the entire set of the Stratomatic Negro League universe, which I think has players that go back as early as like the early 1900s and then into the late 40s? So did you do any sort of narrowing of the field, or did you use the entire set? And the related question is, for assigning players to, say, like Cool Papa Bell to the Giants, was there a mechanism there, or just kind of whatever you felt like?
Okay. First question, did I narrow the pool of players? And the answer is yes. I looked at the careers of a couple hundred players who were active in 1934 or nearby. There's a little bit of literary license at work there, and I couldn't resist putting Charlie Smith, who died in 1932, on the Homestead Grays when I configured that team. John Beckwith was getting a little bit older. He was about 34, I think, in 1934. But again, just arbitrarily, I thought, wow, I want to see how John Beckwith would do in that configuration. So then, with regard to Cool Papa Bell going on the Giants and others similar to that scenario, it was pretty arbitrary. I just did what I felt like doing, and so not only did we have Cool Papa playing for the Giants, you could make an argument that Cool Papa Bell would have been more appropriate on the St. Louis Cardinals, because Bell played in the Negro Leagues with the St. Louis Stars for many years. But it just didn't work out that way. The Giants seemed to need a center fielder, or at least that's what I thought anyway. And so I put Cool Papa on there, and Wild Bill Wright wound up the center fielder for the Cardinals. So they didn't lose out too badly.
That's part of the beauty of a Stratomatic simulation like this, is that you get to dictate kind of how to start the whole thing off, and it then takes on a life of its own. That's part of the fun of Stratomatic. So very interesting choices that John's making here in how he's done this. But I want to go to Stephen Meyerson.
Yeah,
coincidence. How in the world are you?
I'm. How old am I, Bruce? Oh
no, I said no. How are you?
Oh, I am well, and happy to be on one of your many meetings, Bruce.
I appreciate you.
Good. I'm also interested in where this discussion has gone. Coincidentally, I'm currently playing out the 1974 season in an online Stratomatic league, and about how the averages are generally computed. Rod Carew hit 364 that season in Major League, but in my Stratomatic team, he's hitting 328 late in the season because he was more likely to face some of the better pitchers, Gaylord Perry, Phil Niekro, and they had 300 innings, so they had more influence on the game because they pitched so often. For example, against an ordinary pitcher, Carew's card would put him at about 450, and the average pitcher might be about 250. So that would give an overall average of 350 if he faced the average pitcher. And one thing I've learned through Stratomatic is that I've learned a lot about different players from the Negro Leagues and early Major Leagues that I never would have known. The Stratomatic cards show their strengths and weaknesses. I would have not known, for example, Beckwith, who was a power-hitting middle infielder, I believe, second and third base, and I never would have known that differential between him and some of the other players in Negro Leagues or Major Leagues.
Interesting stuff there. Hey, Roger Kathman, how are you?
Doing good. You should use 75 or 76. Much better years for the rest. I mean, in general. I like how you're using Stratomatic in this, but if I wanted to do a simulation for my own, what's an easy, accurate game to play? Does anybody know the best?
Yeah, it's Stratomatic.
Okay. I don't know.
What's your opinion?
I have no clue. It's been
I see.
It's been since I've been 16 that I've played those games, but I'd like to update it.
So the two big boys in the pool, so to speak, are still out there. Appa and Stratomatic. Appa's now out of Georgia. Stratomatic is still out of Long Island. Incidentally, Stratomatic was tested near where Molly and I are on Lake Winnipesaukee when Hal Richmond was vacationing up here as a child. But there's others out there. Replay Baseball is another one that's been out there for a long time now. And then there's a lot of different computer-generated games as well. I would suggest to you, Roger, that you contact the Games and Simulations Committee because they are going to have a ton of information for you when it comes to things like that. And Derek Bain is exceptional when it comes to his knowledge of that realm.
Thank you.
Vanessa Rose, are you able to get on camera and turn your mic on? I am hoping that she can do that. Yeah. Look who's here. It's Vanessa Rose. Holy moly. How in the world are you?
I'm great. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm so happy to see you. It's been a long time.
Hey, John can get me to come out for anything because I mean, that's my guy right there.
So you just put this beautiful thing in the chat that I'd like you to expand upon. Would you do that for me, Vanessa?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna give him a shout out. If you haven't bought the book, if you haven't read the book, please do. John is not paying me to say this. Is an incredible labor of love. So I just written in here. I said just wanted to give John a shout out for pouring countless hours of work into this book. The proof is in the pudding. The way stats and storytelling are woven in this book really illustrate John's skills as a visionary, and the story honors the greatness of Hidden Figures. Just like Strat, fiction can inform us and introduce us to hidden gems. Also, I approve of Grandpa Turkey playing for the Yankees, but don't tell anyone here in Detroit. Just keep that secret on this call. That's it.
So, Vanessa, I got to tell you, we record all our meetings and put them up on our YouTube channel. So you are in big trouble.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Tigers are number one, always.
She got that out, folks, so that's good. So, John, you just got one a heck of an endorsement there, my man.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes. I appreciate it immensely.
I mean, an endorsement from Vanessa Ivy Rose like that? Come on now. That's fantastic. Vanessa, thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for doing this.
I'm glad to do it.
Thank
glad to
you,
do it.
Vanessa.
John's a great guy.
Yeah, big love.
All right. So we've got one more of these before we go on our summer hiatus from virtual meetings. So don't miss next week's meeting. Monday, May 18th at 7 p.m., we're going to have Seth Tannenbaum with us in his book, Bleacher Seats and Luxury Suites, Democracy and Division at the 20th Century Ballpark. The sign-up link is available in the chapter meeting booklet and at the Sabre events calendar. And finally, if you're watching on YouTube and you like what you see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our weekly uploads. And if you are not yet a member, oh my gosh, why not? You need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community, offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom. Sabre boasts more than 35 different research committees, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the room. Just like John, just like Vanessa, just like Dixie, who's got his hand up. Dix, go.
John, I wanted to save my question for post everybody because it has nothing to do with your presentation, which was great. My question to you is, I thought I heard you say that you are from Janesville.
That's correct.
Well, I've spent the last 2 days of my life virtually in Janesville. And my question for you is, have you ever heard of, do you know anything about the Morrissey brothers who were from Janesville?
The Morrissey brothers, ball players?
Yes.
I recognize the name, but I don't know. I don't know any details.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of things that have come together. And Tom and John Morrissey played in the 1880s. And I was just wondering if you knew anything about them, because getting information about them is very difficult.
Well, I will make note of that, Dixie, and we can compare notes on the Morrissey brothers. I'll see what I can find out.
I do have a good obit from Thomas, and he was police chief in Janesville for several years in the 1920s. But his brother John, who was also involved in baseball and actually went to Congress in the 1880s, died in 1884. So he did not live a long life. But Thomas was police chief there for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years.
Wow. Interesting stuff. Another deep dive to take.
Yes, another rabbit hole to go down.
The conversations that ensue on when we get started on just one subject and how it expands, it's fascinating stuff. John, you're fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Bruce. It was really a pleasure. And once again, I appreciate being what was I, the game of the week? No,
the game of the week. The can't miss meeting of the week.
That's it.
I'm going to send you my bill for how much it cost me to get that, man.
All right. Hopefully I can afford it.
Hey, let's get everybody out here so you can watch some baseball on TV tonight. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you next week. Thanks, John. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Bruce. Mm-hmm.